we're 2 minutes in, so I'm just going to kick off. So thank you everyone for coming to our Is It Possible episode 6, and you made it. We did a date change, so apologies to anyone that went to our Wednesday show, which was the normal previously, but we're making it Thursday, so we've now moved to Thursday. So hopefully you can update your calendars, and we'll update the invites as well. So again, apologies to anyone that went to the Wednesday show. I will start. So today's panelists, we've got Nick, we've got Nandish and Wagner. So we've got a spread of Jira and Bitbucket questions and a demo as well. In chat, we've got Lisa, Kirsty and Clarky. Feel free to have a chat with them. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please be on mute. It helps just with understanding what the speakers are saying. Use the chat functionality. If you've got any questions, use that while we're presenting, and someone will answer the question. If you've got any questions for future sessions, please use the link in the email that will be sent out in a week's time. That email will also have the resources that we present here. So there's going to be a selection of library scripts and so forth. So you'll be able to benefit from that, but also check out that link and send us any future questions. And Lisa's just dropped that in the chat as well. So let's get into it. So our first question, is it possible to restrict subtask options based on parent issue types? And I think Wagner's going to answer that.
First of all, hello, everyone. Thanks, Christopher, for sharing the question. And the answer is yes, it's possible to do that. We can do that with behaviors. So let me just show what we have here. I will, as an example, I will create a bug. And I will create a subtask for that. You can see that there are 3 different subtask options. So now let me go to behaviors. Let me enable this one. I will quickly explain what we have here. So in this script, I'm looking for if the issue I'm creating is a subtask. If so, I'm looking for its parent and then checking the parent issue types. So in this case, I'm looking for either task, story, or bug, and then restricting the options to other subtasks only. I will save that. And I will create the subtask again. Okay, now I can see it. The behavior has restricted the options only to other subtasks as put in the script. So yeah, that would be the way to do that.
Cool. Thanks, Wagner. Sorry, I'm searching for my video. So I know that we'll share some of those resources afterwards. Thanks for doing that. Let me just pull up the slide deck. Cool. Hopefully you can see the next question. So the next question comes from the Atlassian community, and I think Nick's going to answer it, and I'm going to have to bore you all with me reading it. So hopefully it's okay. Does anyone have any tricks or tips to understand what ScriptRunner scripts are doing I am analyzing a new system which has loads of legacy scripts, which I need to figure out if we still need, but they are not labeled well, and all I am not yet great at reading Groovy, so we should have rewritten some of these. Are there any easy ways to know what actually is meant to be happening? So Nick, I think you'll answer this.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites because it's, I mean, I inherited a Jira system when I was about 19 years ago, and I was thrown in at the deep end. We didn't have ScriptRunner at that time, but quickly managed to get hold of it. Yeah, so the short answer is no. You're going to have to learn, not Groovy itself, but you learn how to read other people's code. It's nice when people comment their code, but humans are really, really bad at that. Having said that, you don't actually need to understand Groovy too well. The tips I've got are: start simple, pick a simple script, don't go into the detail, don't try to analyze exactly what it is doing, just read it through and get a feel for the structure of what it's doing. So, and the trick I usually use is that as I will read a script from beginning to end, and I won't be looking at exactly what it's doing. I'll be looking at, oh, well, it does A, B, C, and then it loops over something that it established in A, B, and C, and then it does something with the things that it's just looped over, and then it adds some numbers up, and then it returns a result. You just need a general overview of what it's doing. You don't need to understand Groovy. The scripts, the way I see scripts, they tend to be consistent if they're written, especially if they're written by the same person. You end up with patterns of scripts, and I've got a horror story about a consultant who wrote a load of scripts for a company, and then they went to upgrade, not migrate, but they went to upgrade, and they said, we can't make head or tail of these scripts, and they gave them to me, and I went, yeah, I can't either. I don't know what he was doing. But I worked it out in the end by just plotting out roughly what he was doing, and then I was able to optimize them as well. But yeah, start simple, pick a simple script, see if you can work out what it's doing, and then once you've done the simple one, you can move on to more complicated ones. Don't get hung up on exactly what the script is doing when you're reading. When you've got the hang of it, and I mean just the hang of skimming the scripts, not understanding exactly what they're doing. When you've got the hang of that, you'll find it becomes easier and easier and easier to work out what scripts do. Sorry, I'm looking to my left because I've got a whole load of notes here on another screen. When you're looking at migration or upgrade and you're worried about your scripts, one of the useful tools is a built-in script registry, because you can run that and find out where your scripts are actually being used and what type of scripts they are. So it makes it quicker for this analysis, because you can say, oh, well, I know that project's dead and that script only runs in that project, so bye-bye. When you have got the hang of it, the scripts you'll find all the scripts, even happy enabled ones, they make calls into Jira's Java API, and there's some Java docs for that. They're pretty simple. They don't really explain anything, but when a script does something and you don't recognize the function, it's well worth looking it up in the Java doc library, because it does at least give you some indication. One problem that I've run into with scripts is when most people code in English. So, and all of the Atlassian stuff is coded in English. So you find that a lot of the functions have descriptive names. So get summary, but is a valid function within within Jira's Java API. So yeah, can be difficult if you've got multilingual scripts, because you may not, and you know, get summary to a native English speaker says it all. But if you don't speak English, it doesn't make it, you're going to have to go and look it up, I'm afraid. The thing that does trip me over sometimes, well, trips me over a lot, is the custom fields. That's the one place where people fall over all the time. What people don't usually understand about the custom fields is that a custom field is just a blob of data. It's not necessarily of any strict type. So when you the call that most people will use is get custom field value. If you use that, you get an object back from it, but you don't know what shape that object is. It could be a date or date time. It could be a string. It could be a number. It could be any one of it could be a user. It could be all sorts of things. So always pay attention to what your custom field values are. Might be. The next thing I want to say is, if you have a lot of scripts that you want looking at and you need to look at, bear in mind you probably have a support agreement with us. Now, our support people are not there just to help you if things go bang. If you're stuck on analyzing a script, yell. That's what support is for. We can help you. We can probably help you with it. And then the advert bit. We'd have a team that does scripting as a service. They're more than happy to look at your scripts and analyze them for you, and even upgrade them or tell you how to migrate. We have consultants. If you've got a really big project and a lot of scripts, then we have consultancy who will engage with you if you want. There's a customer success team for ScriptRunner. I'm proudly a member of that team, and these are people who will engage with you for any reason. There's no need to set up projects or support calls or whatever. If you've got a lot to do, come talk to us. Obviously, on the website, we've got documentation training, and there's a script library. We'll ping you the link for that later. I think Lisa may have put it in chat already, but I was talking to her earlier. There's another, so that community question I answered a while ago and gave you roughly what I've just said now. But there's a couple of things to add to it. I mentioned Happy earlier. It's an API that adds to the existing API, and it really simplifies how scripts work. So if you're stuck on a script and you're not sure how to translate it, it might be easy to get it rewritten in Happy so that it can just. And the nice thing about Happy is it's actually almost self-explanatory as it goes. And I've got a later question where I've actually written 3 lines of Happy that if I'd written the script in plain Groovy without Happy, it would have been about 45 lines long, and I've managed to do it in 3 or 4 with Happy. And finally, it would be kind of, given the things of the rapidly evolving world, there's artificial intelligence. Now, ChatGPT itself is really, really bad at writing scripts or answering questions, but it's actually very, very good at explaining what they do. So ask it. That's it for me.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, Nick. That's comprehensive. We will go to the next question. So, is it possible to update custom field A automatically when custom field B is updated? And again, Wagner, so this is another Jira question.
Okay, so hello everyone, now unmuted. So yes, this is very possible using ScriptRunner. We can do that using a listener. So we'll just show how we can do that. For that, I created 2 custom fields. I can see them here. They are a simple text field. I'm calling it source. And the other one is the target. That is a date time field. So what we want to do is check whenever this field is updated. We want to get the date from history and set that as the target field value. So to do that, I will create a listener. Okay, a custom listener. I'm looking for the issue updated event. And I add a script that goes to the history, checks what's the last time that field has been updated, and set that date as the target field value. Let me save. clicking the wrong button. Let me just double check if it has been saved. Okay, it's there. So now let me update it. We'll add a new value to the source. Update. Now let me go back on edits, and I can see the target field has been updated with the value. So we got that from history, and we got the exact date where the field has been updated. As an alternative, we can also do that going to console, and we can query the history. So in this case, we can get the issue key. And use the issue key and get all changes for that field in that issue. So let me run that. And this will give me this value. This value we are setting the field. So users can do that at any time for in field, just comparing the history. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Wagner. Again, we're going to share this script as well in library. So that should be in your inboxes next week when we send the recordings out for this. So let's make sure we're on. Cool. So another question, is it possible to change date picker to date time picker? So this comes from the Atlassian community.
That's another one for me, isn't it? And it's, again, I'm afraid it's a quite a negative answer. The way that custom fields work in Jira means that they are immutable. Once you've created it, you can't change it. You can't edit a field type. You have to create a new one and move it over. There is a trick you can play on server with certain types of data. So with the date picker, if you want to move it to a date time picker, if you are willing to take the risk, because you're unsupported if you do this, you can stop Jira, take a backup of your database, because you should always take a backup of your database if you're going to do this sort of stuff. Change the date, the field, the custom field type. It's one line and one field in one table. And I wouldn't risk trying to automatically change anything else because there are other things you're going to have to do. But if you update it with SQL, then you can then restart your Jira. You'll then need to edit the custom field and check that the searcher is valid, because some custom fields only support certain types of searcher. There's no point in having a date picker on a string, for a date search on a string, for example. And then once you've checked the searcher is correct or modified it, then you have to run a full locking reindex on it, and everything will be fine. There's a couple of caveats here. The first one is you can't go backwards with this one, because in the database, a date picker holds they're both held as date time objects, I suppose. And the date picker fields only always have 0000. They have midnight put in for the time at all times. When you've got a date time picker, obviously that it's not midnight. You could put in anything in the 24 hours. If you try to go backwards, it will work, but you'll get some very odd behavior from the searches. If you've got a date that used to be a date and you've put 6 a.m. on it, it will still behave as though it's a date time, which means that your searches won't work on a daily basis. So you'd have to strip all of that out. The more important thing, I think, though, is that you can only do that conversion between fields that have compatible data. So date pickers and date time pickers, they're the same. They contain the same data type of data. Text fields, short text and long text, different types. you can actually convert from short text to long text. You can never go backwards. Numeric fields contain numbers. There aren't any other numeric fields. There's just a one-off number. But you have to consider that if you're going to do it. But if you don't have access to your database, or you're trying to do something where you're also converting to a different field type, or you're on cloud, your only option is to create a new field of the type that you want, and then copy all your data into it. And then you can delete the old field. I mentioned earlier Happy. This is where the Happy script I wrote earlier comes in. I've got a 4-line script, which I'm more than happy to share with everyone if you really want it. 4 lines. Well, technically it's 5, but one of them's a bracket. So, but yeah, basically you have to create a new field, copy your old data into the new field. You may have to convert it depending on the field types, and then you delete the old field because you don't need it anymore.
Cool, thank you.
In the same way, 19 years.
I don't know if a bracket does count as, I think it does count as a line, but do we count comments as well as a line?
My comments are on the end of the lines anyway.
Okay, well, at least there's comments. Thank you. Cool. Let's motor on. So our next is a demonstration from Nandish Bitbucket around the template repository. So I'll hand over to Nandish. Thank you. Nandish, you might be on mute.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Hope you are all able to see my screen. So I'm going to talk about template repositories that we have introduced in ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. A common use case that we have seen in a lot of organizations is that they want to spin up new projects quickly based on a base repository or something. So they have a base template. For example, if your company is invested into Spring technologies, you might have a Spring starter project, and you might spin off multiple projects off that base repository to help other teams quickly scale and to follow a certain standard within your project or your organization. Bitbucket currently doesn't allow you to copy repositories and create your own repositories from based on some other repositories. You can always fork the repositories, but there is always a link of a parent-child between the main repository and the forked one. What you want instead is a completely separate, independent repository with its own commit history and everything. So the people who work on it are responsible for whatever they put into that project. We already had a feature where you could clone the configuration of a repository. By configuration, I mean any configurations that you have for ScriptRunner or some of the configurations from the Bitbucket. So for example, I have a repository here. And if I go to settings, I can see that I've configured a couple of pre-hooks for this repository, and I also have some merge checks. These are ScriptRunner features. I also have some merge checks. These are native features of Bitbucket. Now I've enabled some of them for this repository. So we already had a feature where you could clone the repository. So you can create a new repository, and that would copy the configuration into the new repository. What we have now added is that we can also copy the content of the repository. So the branches of the repository and along with its tags, and you can choose whether you want to preserve or get rid of the commit history for the source repository. So I'll quickly go to where it lies. So you can go to ScriptRunner, built-in scripts in ScriptRunner, and then you should see a clone repository built-in script. You can select the source repository, And this is any repository. So you don't have to mark any repository as a template or anything like other ecosystems mandate, but you can basically use any repository, any existing repository as a template. So for example, I have this repository, I want to use it as a template to create another repository. So I select this as a source repository and now choose whether I want to clone the configuration. This is the configuration I showed you earlier, the merge checks, the permissions, the script runner features, whether you want to clone them or not. I will select this. Then you can select what content you want to copy over. So you can create a new repository without copying any content. So it will create you an empty repository, or you can choose to clone all the branches and tags, keeping the commit history as it is, or you can create a new repository, discarding all the previous commits and tags, but keep all the branches intact. So I'll select this just for previewing. The target project, you can create it into any project that you have access to. I'm logged in as a global admin, so I have access to all the projects. I currently have just one project. I'll select that. I can give in the new repository name and then just hit 1, and it will then create the repository for me. And if I go to, I chose the discard commit history. So as you can see, there is just a single commit, but the content from the source repository has all been migrated to the new repository. It has also copied over all the branches for that repository over to the new repository, but it has not copied over the commit history for any of the branches. If you go to the settings, you'll see that it has preserved the settings of the source repository. So the settings are the same as what was in the source repository. So you have one pre-hook and I think one merge check. I could go back, I could create another repository, and this time I will choose the other option, which is to preserve the commit history and the tags and everything. And if I do that, then this is the new rep 3. And if I go to the commit history, this is the same commit history as the source repository. It again preserves all the configuration because we selected the clone configuration option. So this is how you can quickly spin up new projects, and these are independent repositories. So you cannot commit from this repository to the other repository. I mean, in case of forks, you can pull commits from the fork into the main repository and create pull requests. In this case, you cannot. And this will help anybody, trying to follow that pattern of, for example, many organizations have microservices, and most of the microservices have the same content. And if you have a base repository that has most of the content, you can just quickly create a new repository for each microservice and ask teams to work on it independently. The other use case for this may be that you don't have a base template, but you have a set of instructions on how you would like the repositories to set up or the CI/CD pipelines to be set up. So you could put that up in a repository with some README files or contribution guidelines, and then you can just create new repositories so that every time a new team is onboarded, they know where to look for stuff and everything. So this was all about template repositories. I hope this feature is useful to everyone. Would be happy to hear any feedback on this.
Thank you, Nandish. Thanks for that. Just reshare the screen. Cool. So we've got some exciting information to give to you. So Kirsty, I know that you've got something to share.
Yes, I do. So taking a while to come off camera. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsty. I'm the brand and events marketing manager here at ScriptRunner. So some information for you, very exciting information. The next stop of the ScriptRunner Tour is in London on the 21st September. And this will be our London office in Shoreditch. And you'll be able to have your Is It Possible questions answered in person. You'll get the chance to spend some time with our ScriptRunner experts. You'll be hearing about Jira, Confluence, and also you'll be getting the first look at the new member of the ScriptRunner family, which is very exciting. We will drop the registration page in the chat, so make sure you reserve your spot, and we can't wait to see you there. Which leads me on to the next slide, please, Warren. Oh, drum roll. That means our next virtual Is It Possible will be on the Thursday, the 2nd of November. So that's just another note to move everything over to your calendar if you haven't already done so. But thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirsty. Sorry, I was so taken aback by the pastries in this photo. That's why I was like, oh, my mouth was just watering. So please do turn up so that you can feed us. So we also get food.
That is the main thing. Also free food. Should always mention free food.
I think that's, yeah, I'm there. Cool. So yeah, you do get to meet us in person and eat baked goods. So there are going to be resources that we'll share later as well. So I know that we've been sharing on chat, but also in the email shot that we'll send next week with the recording, we'll have that there as well. So thank you. Thank you for your time. And again, apologies to anyone that turned up yesterday on Wednesday for that previous session, but it is, as Kirsty said, Thursdays going forward. So thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.